Hey, what's good, YouTube? Welcome back to the Brown Gen. I'm making this video because one of the members in our private group had asked about this. So the basic concept is, whenever we're farming airdrops on a live network, so not a test net, we're sitting in the live mainnet of whatever ecosystem, we are subject to paying for our fees, right? Like we have to pay gas fees. Sometimes we have to pay certain fees, even to use a protocol, right? Like they're sort of their own sort of what they like to call withholding fee, like Arbiter Finance does. And the whole goal here is finding ways to reduce those airdrop fees, right? Because how profitable you are in an airdrop is how much you earn from the airdrop minus any fee that it costs you to get there. So that's what we're going to cover in this video. But before we do, just remember, I'm not a financial advisor. Please do your own research. Any idiot can open up YouTube and make a video. As always, we also have a private group. So if you want the extra coaching, guidance, and support, check it out. Link in the description below. So one of the things I wanted to talk about before we even started talking about how to reduce gas is understanding exactly what gas is and sort of why it makes sense. So what you have to understand is these platforms, these blockchains, they needed a way to ensure that they knew how to prioritize transactions, right? So we're used to gas, being in our cars, and it doesn't matter how fast that Lamborghini is going because we would get there at the same time, or not the same time, but we would get there at the sort of pace we wanted to, right? And what gas does is basically you're bidding on, you want to be given the sort of optimal speed to run first. And the reason for that is on the blockchains, it's a zero-sum game. You can't have everyone go first. You don't have a sort of massive highway. There is going to be a bottleneck. So how do you prioritize who gets to go first, who gets to go second, who gets to go third, and sort of beyond that, right? So that is why gas transactions are so important, because it allows the blockchain to decide, okay, well, how are we going to kind of prioritize and sort of allow people to transact in the way that they want to, given that we have limited ability to limited capacity. This is more so on Ethereum, where we already know how, like, I don't want to say fragile, but you guys have probably seen how fast the gas price goes up, and it's because people start outbidding each other trying to get to a certain amount. So there are a couple sort of technicalities that you need to know. Sort of we have what's called GWEI, which is sort of the gas limit, sort of gas price per unit that's used, and then your sort of gas limit, which is how far you're willing to go for that, and that sort of gives you the value in gas that's used. And a lot of us use kind of Ethereum as the benchmark. So what you need to understand is there are reasons gas fees go up. Number one, if the transaction is complex. So basically, like if you have a ton of things trying to be computed in a transaction, well, your gas fee is going to be a little more expensive versus a transaction that's very basic. The other thing is, because of hackers, and sort of a lot of people don't like this, but there are base fees on many blockchains. What that means is below this price, we're not doing business with you, because we are not going to allow a transaction to take place if you don't pay this minimum amount, which is the base fee. Reason for that is there are hackers, and this is another reason why I hate hackers. A lot of people try to take advantage of protocols that don't have a base fee by spamming transactions, trying to sort of disrupt the network to sort of uncover some sort of security flaws to take advantage of. I've seen this happen to a ton of protocols, and whenever this happens, they just raise their base fee up higher so that it costs the hackers even more to do this. So eventually the risk versus reward is not worth it for them. On top of it, and sort of I mentioned this before, you have a priority fee, which is, okay, now that we know what the minimum is to transact, do you want to go first? How much are you willing to pay to do that? And that's sort of the additional incentive fee that you pay on top of it to kind of get on top, right? This is very important to know, because let's say you want to mint something. Let's say you're on an NFT protocol that this NFT is going to be a banger, right? Like it's like a Bored Ape version 2.0. There are 200 available that are left, and you get the opportunity to buy one of them because you are on early, but everyone else is too. you've got to know ahead of time how much more are you willing to pay in gas to make sure you front run their transactions. And that is how a lot of people snipe NFTs. They just pay more in gas because they're like, hey, I'm willing to do this because I know the price that I'm going to get in the future is going to make this worthwhile. So that is sort of the basics that I want you to understand. And also, like, when you are in Ethereum, because this is probably the biggest complaint, once you sort of like pay these gas fees, sometimes they'll go up after. So even if you've made the bid, if somebody bids higher than you after, by the time yours has gotten processed, well, you're in queue behind them, and you can go back into MetaMask or whatever and select a new gas token, a new gas price. And when you do, it replaces the old one. So you're not adding it to whatever, it's a replacement effect. So if you paid 100 in gas and you want to go higher, you're like, okay, I bid 200. I want to go before them. So that's sort of what you do. Now, one of the first things I'll tell you guys, and this should be no surprise, is if you're interacting on Ethereum-based blockchains like EVM, you should be monitoring the GUI, the sort of GUI on sort of each of these. And the reason for that is it tells you how much something will cost you to transact on Ethereum mainnet. But some of this is also transferred to, the corresponding Ethereum L2s. The reason for that is, they're all built based off Ethereum. So while they do try to save money and sort of reduce costs in their different ways, like ZK Sync is doing it one way with ZK rollups. You got, Optimism doing it the other way with optimistic rollups. And they will have a massive reduction in price. But as the GUI goes up, the price goes up across the board. So what you want to do is look at the heat map and just see how this is trending right now, or at least yesterday. It was sort of 88 GUI sort of going up because it was actually lower during the day. So you just want to take a look at the timing. A lot of times you'll notice that it's actually in the night in America, GUI is cheaper. So plan your transactions accordingly. That's number one. And the other thing is also just, be aware of how much swapping will cost you on Ethereum mainnet and bridging and NFTs. That's why I like to swap elsewhere and then bridge it over back to Ethereum mainnet if I have to do that using interoperability network. Now, here's something I want to mention, and also on the right, you can see here, Orbiter Finance has some more quests. You can do that if you want to. But let's say you're looking at bridging, and I've seen this mistake happen a ton. Whenever you're doing a bridge, and I mentioned this in the last video with Hyperlane, doesn't matter. So let's just look at Optimism. Let's say I'm hitting Optimism. I'm going to just pretend we're going to do this transaction. The withholding fee is 0.0065. And sort of the gas fee, let me just check how much it would be. I'm not going to confirm this. Okay, the gas is 1 cent. Sorry, it didn't show up here. 0.065. All right, let's do, I can't do one. But basically, let me do ZK Sync because that will actually show you. I have enough there to do this. So we're going to modify the chain to ZK Sync. And in ZK Sync terms, okay, I got 0.97. So let's swap this to ZK Sync. And now, let's say I do 0.1 to, not Ethereum, because Ethereum's the worst, but let's say I'm doing it to Blast, okay? I will be doing this eventually. So I hit send. It's 0.0004 ETH, and the gas fee is 66 cents, I would have said. Okay. Now let's say I'm doing 0.9 ETH. Look at that. The withholding fee is exactly the same. Let me just check the gas price just quickly to see what it looks like on the side. 66 cents. Okay. And the reason I show you this, and the reason why this is so important, is when you're doing bridging, right? When you're doing bridging, so important that you realize that it's flat fee. You're paying a toll like you would when you go on like a bridge or when you go on like a highway or a specific, highway in the US, for example. You just pay a flat rate depending on how far you're going and whatever. And that could be the exit, right? Which is what we're seeing here with Optimism. What you should be focused on here is, okay, well, if I'm going to be bridging and I'm paying, 0.0004 ETH and the 66 cents every time, why don't I just push a ton at once? And by doing that, not only do I sort of get the volume in, but I save a ton of fees. So that will maximize, because you guys know we talk about bridging volume and transaction volume. It's considered transaction volume when you're going from one chain to the other. So just keep that in mind. That's another way you get that transaction volume. So this is a really good way to do it. And that's number one. Number two, when you're doing swaps, and sort of let's just take sync swap as an example, what you'll notice here is when I do like 0.1 ETH going to USDC, I'm losing $1. I'm losing $1 in sort of the swap. You see that from the difference here. And I lose like 18 cents in estimated gas costs. If I do this with 0.9 ETH, I lose $12, right? I'm losing $12, 18 cents, right? So one of the things you'll see is this one actually scales up, right? So this one, I went up 9x in size, but 12x in cost. So this is why I think when you're doing transaction volume, this is why people tend to do a lot lower. You're actually better off doing sort of swaps as lower amounts because you don't save anything. In fact, a lot of times slippage and sort of low liquidity come into play where it'll actually harm you more than help you. Because the way it works, so just so you guys know, is there's a sort of a order book on these protocols called an automated market maker, right? Very different than what we have in centralized exchanges where you have an actual full order book, like, and it's not automated. It's like actual bids, actual sells. This is based on a liquidity pool. So what happens is after you've sort of taken out a certain amount, you then go drop to the next amount to buy. So like that's why you're getting less favorable pricing as the amount goes higher. Also, if the liquidity is not there, you get slippage fees, which can hurt you. So when you're doing swaps, I like to do smaller amounts. When I'm doing bridges, I like to do the maximum amount I can. And the reason for that, once again, is if I know the bridge is safe, obviously, and I've already used a bridge in the past, I'm happy pushing big volume, less fees, get the transaction volume regardless. Now, if you're looking to get transaction volume on a protocol, one example of things you could do is like, let's say you find a Zero Land, an Aave, or whatever. You can go in here. You can actually supply the ETH. So if I was to go here, put 0.9 ETH in here, it'll cost me 12 cents, and I will get $3,520 worth of transaction volume when I deposit. And by the way, I always check before I do this. So like before any protocol, what you do is you go in, you deposit a very, very small amount, like 0.001 ETH or something. See if you can withdraw it. Especially, one that like Zero Land, Aave, whatever. Then what you do is great. Now I put the big volume in and I can withdraw it later. And this is very different than doing the sort of wrap ETH, unwrap ETH transaction because I really believe those things will be filtered out. In this case, the safest way, and what I used to do, is you supply 0.9 ETH here. Then you go, okay, I'm going to now borrow tomorrow against this ETH, get a little more transaction volume. 2 days later, pay it back, get that transaction volume back, and then withdraw the Ethereum the next day. And I've gotten $7,000, $8,000 of volume, paid $1.50, $2 in gas fees, and it looks absolutely normal. It's not Cybele behavior. So these are ways I'm trying to help you guys because it's not just ZK Sync, but it's literally every platform that has these capabilities. Be on the lookout. Bridging, go for the big volume. Swapping, small is better. And if you can sort of do these deposit withdrawal sort of schemes on these LSD protocols, this is the benefit and how you can maximize. So that's pretty much what I want to cover in this video, guys. I hope that sort of explains it. Please sort of, take this in, and I'm going to link this in sort of my compendium of learner videos. I think it's super important because I want to keep you guys keeping your airdrop fees low, and this is one of the best ways to do it. So with that all being said, guys, I know, this is not a typical video that I would make, but hey, if you haven't already, hit the like button because I think a lot of people could benefit from this. Share this video, hit subscribe, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you keep getting this content. And also, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. See you on the AMA.